Today I'm simply going to talk about some books that I have recently read, some books I'm currently reading, and some books that I plan to be reading soon. This summer has definitely been one of those times where I have felt like there are way too many books to read and not enough time, but I've been trying to get through as many as I can. We usually, of course, classify books based on whether we have read them, are currently reading, or plan to read them, so today I'm going to share 2 books from each of those categories for me. First up are 2 books that I have recently read. The first of those is The Star-Touched Queen by Roshani Chokshi. This is basically a retelling of the Hades and Persephone myth mixed in with some Indian mythology and a very fantastical Indian setting. I know this book has gotten some mixed reviews because some people don't like the main character and they accuse it of having insta-love, which it kind of does, but that doesn't always bother me. I really loved the story of this. It mixes in reincarnation and multiple lives and all this fantasy and myth, and it's just a really cool world that it takes place in, and it's a really good story. It's got a great romance. I personally really loved the main character. I thought she was realistically flawed and impulsive, and I thought the writing was very beautiful. The only problem I had with it is that sometimes the writing wasn't as clear as I would like it to be, so I wasn't quite sure what was happening in some scenes, or it took me a little while to catch on, but I still loved this book. I definitely recommend it. It was a really fast read. Next up is Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow. Y'all, this is probably one of the best books I've read this year. This book is about a girl named Charlie who has really just had an awful life so far. Her dad committed suicide, her mom was abusive, she was homeless for a while, she had to live with a pimp. The book starts when she has just recently been admitted into a facility that specializes in girls that self-harm, but she unfortunately doesn't get to stay there for very long, gets released, ends up moving to Arizona to live with one of her friends, and she's trying to get her life back together, but of course that isn't easy. This book is really beautiful, it's painful, it's hopeful, the writing is just amazing, and you should definitely read it. I'm sometimes hesitant to read books with these sorts of subjects and themes because they can be really heavy, and this book it's very heavy and deep, but it also, like I said, is very hopeful and just a really, really good book. 2 books I'm currently reading. I am reading The Last Boy and Girl in the World by Siobhan Vivian. I really like the concept and plot of this book. It's about a town on a riverbank that is slowly flooding, and the state has decided to evacuate it and just turn the town into a lake, and the teenagers are all kind of having their last hurrah while some of the parents are trying to defend their right to stay in the town. It also just has an amazing cover. I love covers with shiny stuff on them. I have been struggling with this book a little bit because the main character is kind of unlikable and selfish, but I also have a lot of mad respect for the author for being courageous enough, I guess, to write a really unlikable female character, because that's hard to do and challenging to do and not the most popular thing to do. So I am trying to finish it because I do want to know what happens to the characters and the town, but it hasn't been the easiest read for me. I am also reading Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein. This is, of course, our book club book that we are talking about this Sunday. I have already read this book. I read it a couple years ago and absolutely adored it. It's one of my favorite books. I am just rereading it right now. I just started it yesterday, so I'm not very far in. I'm mostly just trying to refresh myself on some of the plot twists and the major points that happen in it so that I can actually discuss it on Sunday. But it's just as good as it was the first time. I'm loving it all over again. I had a really hard time picking out only 2 books for the TBR segment of this video because I don't know if you remember seeing my TBR shelf a couple of weeks ago on one of my videos on my shelf tour, but there are a lot of books on it right now, so I really struggled to decide which 2 to talk about. But the first one is a book that I am very excited about because I love this author's other book, and that is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. If you haven't read Everything Everything, you should definitely check that one out, and then read this one when it comes out in November. It is about a girl whose family is about to be deported to Jamaica, and she really doesn't have time for boys, but then of course she meets this boy who is dealing with his family's high expectations, and they just really have a connection, so I'm excited to read this. Last up is a book I can't show you because I have the ebook on my Nook, but here's a picture of the cover. It's Serpentine by Cindy Pon. I bought this as an ebook a couple weeks ago because it was on sale for, I think, $3, and I had a credit in my Barnes & Noble account, so I got it. I've heard really great things about Serpentine. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the main character can turn into some sort of serpent or dragon or something, and I love the fantastical Chinese setting of Cindy Pon's other books, so I'm definitely excited to read this one too. So those are just 6 of the books that have been on my radar lately that I have been reading. Some old books, mostly new books. They're all definitely books that you should be checking out if you haven't read them already. Let me know in the comments what you've been reading lately or what you are looking forward to in the next couple of months. And don't forget to join us this Sunday at 7:30 Eastern Time for our book club of Codename Verity, just like I talked about earlier. If you haven't read it yet, definitely pick it up and read it as fast as you can because it is just a beautiful and heartbreaking book.